Welcome to week 5 of our Stay Calm and Well webinar series, part 4. I can't believe we're going to be wrapping this up next week. Couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. If you need captioning during the session, please click the CC button in your Zoom menu below. We have live captions. Those will pop up if you need the subtitles. This session is being recorded so that we can post it later. You'll be able to view the recording, and we will post the website here in the chat. If you have any questions throughout the session, please use the Q&A feature in your Zoom menu below. If someone has a question similar to yours, please use the little thumbs up button to like it, and the top questions will populate at the top, and we will do our best to answer everything here at the end of the session. With that, I'd like to introduce Courtney Woelfl. She's a family and consumer sciences educator in Cuyahoga County, and she's going to be talking to us about sustainability at home with water. So I will kick it over to Courtney. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks so much for joining me today and this learning community. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability at home, and we're going to specifically focus on water resources. We're going to talk a little bit about how sustainability is a complex topic, and so we're just going to focus on one small piece today and some easy things that you can do. So, before we get started, I wanted to provide a refresher. Last week, Patrice, if you were able to join her for her part of this webinar series, she talked about gardening and its impact on health. And there were some skills that she was able to share how you could build them. And so one of them was using gardenings to complement your other wellness activities. Identify your self-care needs and use plants to help set yourself up for success. And then also to dream big, but start small. And as someone who's worked a lot with gardeners, I cannot emphasize how important that last one is to, pick a manageable place to start and then to go from there. So she has some additional resources at that go.osu link. So by the end of this program, I hope that you'll be able to recognize sustainability as a complex topic that exists on a spectrum. Hopefully you'll be able to evaluate and compare some water conservation or protection measures that you can take in your home. And then maybe you'll apply what you've learned either by sharing with a friend or by implementing one of these things in your own home. So I just wanted to give a 10,000-foot view first of what I mean when I say sustainability. So when I say sustainability, I mean the avoidance of the depletion of natural resources to maintain an ecological balance. So that takes into factor social, economic, and environmental needs. And we need to make sure that when we're providing suggestions that they are equitable, that they're actually possible, they're viable, and that they're acceptable to the people who are then needing to implement those practices. And then I wanted to talk about whose responsibility is it to take care of our planet. And I wanted to emphasize that there is some level of individual responsibility, but we, just making changes in our own homes, can't make change at a broad scale. So we also need to build a community who will make these changes with us. We need to tap on our elected officials and to share what we see as priorities and make sure they're reflected by our policymakers. And then we also need to have companies on board. So today we're going to talk about water. And we're going to go through a few different rooms that might be in your typical home or apartment that have some that use water. So we're going to start with the room that uses actually the most water in our home, and that is the bathroom. So in our bathrooms, we have toilets, and toilets actually are the largest use of water in residential systems. Up to 30% of the water we use in our homes is from flushing the toilet. So I have for you a little bit of, on this chart, it has these dates, and I wanted to explain to you a little bit more about what those dates are referencing. So in 1992, the Environmental Protection Act passed. George H.W. Bush signed it into law, and it went into effect in 1994. So this put into place federal standards for water and how much water different faucets, taps, toilets could use. So that's what you see. After 1994, that is the new federal standard for how much water can be used for these different things. EPA WaterSense is a program that products that companies make can be certified as EPA WaterSense products. And this means that they are working at 20% less water than what the federal standard is. So you can find more about this on EPA WaterSense's website, but also when you're shopping in your home goods store, you may see this logo showing EPA WaterSense, and it means that that product meets the 20% below water consumption of the federal standard. So, wanted to talk a little bit about these numbers. You may see, how many of you have ever been in a room or in a bathroom where they have the toilet with the two different buttons? There's the big button for solid waste and the little button for liquid waste. Those buttons are the same. The big button is 1.28 gallons per flush for the solid waste, which is the EPA WaterSense standard, but it's also referred to as a high efficiency toilet. And then there's the ultra high efficiency toilet, which is the 0.8. That's the little flush, also on that dual flush system. And if you are skeptical about the power behind a ultra high efficiency toilet flush, it can move up to 1.75 pounds of solid waste. So it does put some power, that 1 gallon. So I forgot to mention it on my last slide, but want to point out that when we talk about sustainability and changes we can make to improve the sustainability in our home, I want to emphasize that while there are products that may be more efficient than the ones we currently have, there is a level of waste when we're consuming new products. So a lot of times we want to try to make the products we have work for us and then only buy when we really need to get a new product. So there are some ways that you can improve your current toilet to make it more water efficient. One of the first things you can do is to put some food dye in the tank of the toilet and leave it for about a half hour, 45 minutes. And if any of that color has moved into the basin or the bowl of your toilet, that means you probably have a leak. And if you're leaking water, we're wasting water. So fixing that leak, a lot of times it's a gasket, you can replace it yourself, or it would be a quick repair with the plumber, and that could save water, but also save you some money from having a leaky toilet. Another thing that you can do is you can drop a brick in the tank. We don't recommend using a household building brick anymore because they can disintegrate, they can interrupt these other features that your toilet has to make it function properly. But there is a company that sells these rubber bricks that you can use in your toilets. They displace about a half gallon of water, meaning that you save about 2.5 gallons of water per person in the household each day. Something, I'll share a link at the end. Their ad campaign with the Sierra Club was pretty funny. And so you can watch that video on your own time if you are interested. So also in the bathroom, we have our faucets and our shower heads. And so we have a typical standard that federal regulation requires no more than 2.5 gallons per minute of water coming through our shower head and no more than 2.2 gallons per minute of water coming through our faucets. Again, the WaterSense standard, that EPA WaterSense, has 20% less water. And so if you are buying a new faucet, you can go ahead and, if you wanted to, install one of those WaterSense faucets, then you can save about a half gallon per minute, which is not insignificant. So if you're not ready to update your fixtures, there are some other things you can do to save water using your shower head or your faucet. One of them is to have a shorter shower, right? Not only would that save the amount of water, but also the amount of water we're heating. And so that energy cost would go down. The average person, when I read this statistic, I was shocked. The average person takes a 5-minute shower. And I was like, oh no, I definitely take longer than a 5-minute shower. I need to reevaluate my thinking time in the shower. And then another thing you can do, I have a little image here, and that's a screen grab of a water faucet adapter. You unscrew the little screen on your faucet, you install this and screw it back on, and that brings you down, your regular faucet, down to an EPA WaterSense amount of gallons per minute. And so for less than $5, you can pick one of these up at your local home goods store, and you can have a EPA standard faucet without replacing your fixture and for less than $5. So when we're talking about moving into the laundry room, there are less standards about laundry, not in the same way that there are about our toilets, our faucets, our shower heads. So we have here the history of about how many gallons of water each load of these different washing machines have based on year or based on a front loading versus a top loading. And one concern I know that I've heard about front loading washing machines is that they can get smelly. This is because water can get trapped between the door and the gasket near the drawer of the soap. And so if you have a front loading washing machine and you experience this, the best solution is some water and bleach solution, and then to wipe it out so that you can kill any mold that's in there. So a front loading washing machine is more water efficient than a top loading, even today. Beyond just washing our clothes, EPA found that the US generates about 32 billion pounds of waste in our textiles. So 95% of our textiles can be recycled, but only about 15% currently are being recycled. And when we discard our clothing, this wastes a lot of energy. And so I know that you might be thinking, this is about water. So it takes the energy to ship, it takes the energy to grow the cotton or the other materials that are being used in our clothing. And so if we can reuse them, we can save those resources. There is about 1/3 of a pound of pesticides used on each naturally made shirt. So a natural cotton, a wool, something made from organic materials. So here are some other ways. Obviously, we can reuse our laundry. We can give it away. We can thrift it. We can also unsubscribe to those emails. And this may help us mentally to not have an inbox full of 3,000 emails asking us to please buy something, but also it helps to relieve that thought of like, oh, I need that, I need this, I need this. And it makes it more intentional when you go out to look for something that you've identified as a need rather than seeing it presented to you as a need. You can learn to make repairs. You can rent your clothes. This is an option for all, but fortunately, women have more choices when it comes to renting clothes. And if you buy new, you can pick from more sustainable brands. You can look for organic cotton or sustainable practices. And you could also, break those t-shirts down into rags and reuse them. And one final thing is when you're doing your laundry, you want to make sure you throw your lint away in the trash when you're cleaning out your dryer lint. Some people have the idea of putting it outside for wildlife to build their nests, but our laundry sheds a lot of microplastics. And if we're putting them outside, then we're introducing microplastics to the environment. And especially if we're using them if we think someone might use it for a nest, then we're putting it right in direct contact with wildlife. So in our kitchens, we have seen progress over the amount of gallons per load our dishwashers use. A water efficient dishwasher does save almost half the amount of gallons of water that is used. There is some debate about hand washing dishes, and some resources say that hand washing is less, about 2.5 gallons per load of dishes. I think it depends a lot. We've had a lot of conversations about, well, is that true? Is that not true? I think it depends a lot on how you wash your dishes. If you wash your dishes where you're turning on the tap, you're running it, you're doing suds, you're turning it off, and having that continuous water running, you are probably using more than 2.5 gallons of water. However, if you're filling a sink and using it as like a dunk method and doing it more like an industrial kitchen does, then you actually may be using less water. But it's not really easy to know, and there's not a lot of great research about hand washing dishes. So I wanted to move to the kitchen and talk a little bit about food waste. So milk is one of the most wasted foods in the United States. About 12% of all food that's wasted by weight is milk. And this is really costly because it's costly to produce, to ship, to process. We have to keep it cold. We have to keep it cold when we store it, when we ship it, and then when you bring it home. So a study at Ohio State University actually found that 64% of respondents said that they would throw away milk if it had a date label, where only about 45% said that if it didn't have a date label, they would keep the milk. So they had participants look at a gallon of milk, smell it, and say if it was past expiration, and then the other ones that had no expiration date. And so when we talk about food waste, a lot of times we look at these date labels. And according to USDA, there are these three date labels: best if used by, or best if used before, sell by, use by. And most of the time, these labels are indicating a quality date, not necessarily a safety date. So with that milk, the milk is safe to drink maybe 1 or 2 days after that best if used by. But a lot of people see, oh, it's expired, we're going to dump it out. Even more so with canned goods or boxed goods, we see that it says sell by, use by. These dates are sort of confusing. And so they're saying that the quality may decrease, the color might be a little bit different. For canned products, sometimes they'll be a little bit soggier, the green beans, but they're not necessarily saying it's not safe to consume. There are exceptions to this, one being baby formula. If that quality or the nutritional quality of baby formula decreases, that would be really bad because it's the total nutrition for an infant. And then the other thing is things that are not heated prior to consumption, like soft cheeses or lunch meats. So I'm not talking about those things when I'm saying, a box of crackers is safe to consume a month, 2 weeks, 1 day after the best if used by or best if sold by. So sometimes this leads to the question of, well, if it's safe to eat, can I donate that food? Maybe I bought a case of them and I don't like them, so they sat here and now they're expired. And generally the answer is no, we don't want to donate expired foods. And that's because others may not know or recognize that it's still safe to consume. And if we're not comfortable eating it, then maybe, we don't want to just pass that food on to someone else who also may not feel comfortable eating it. Oops. So why is this important? The average American spends about $1,300 on food that ends up being wasted every year. That ends up being about $3.50 each day. And it's the biggest part of our budget. It is more than the average American spends on gasoline, on clothing, on household heating and electricity, and property taxes. So it is a larger line item in our budget than all of those other things. The number one source of our food budgets that is spent on wasted foods comes from meats and seafoods. And for all of these things, it goes beyond just the food being wasted. We are also considering the water that went into growing the thing that the animal ate, and then the animal feeding and caring for the animal itself. So the waste goes beyond just the food. There's a larger environmental impact, which includes using water. So some things that you can do in your kitchen. Again, you could install one of those water-saving taps for your faucet. You can use your freezer. Ohio State has some really excellent fact sheets on how to freeze foods so that you can consume them at a later date. You can have a use first corner of your fridge, before you go grocery shopping. I know I clean out my fridge once a week to make sure that these are things that I need to use or else they're going to go bad. You can organize your kitchen in a first in, first out. You see a good sale on a canned good, you can go home and then rotate your stock to make sure you're using the things you bought the furthest from now till now. You can compost. If you don't feel like composting yourself, there are companies that help with composting. You can buy from bulk bins so that you're just purchasing what you need. You're also potentially reducing plastic waste there, but not always. And then something that I have found helpful in my own home is labeling leftovers so that I and others know what is actually in there. And then preparing food so that it's ready to eat. So getting home and dicing up some peppers or cutting some apples, because then we eat it a lot faster. When I'm hungry, I can just go pull it out of the fridge. So I have a lot of resources. These are all numbered and referenced within the presentation so that you can just click on it and read more about what I read. And I hope that this week you'll be able to identify some ways to reduce your water consumption in your home. Define what sustainability means to you. Like I said, it's a spectrum. So find what works for you and to share something that you learned today with a friend. So I wanted to thank you, and I think I see some questions.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Go ahead and read those. So if anyone has any questions, please post them in the Q&A for us and we will get them answered. The first one we have is, where do we recycle textiles?
Sure. So there are a lot of places you can recycle textiles. I can find some and share them so that they get posted to the website with this recording. I know a lot of, just offhand, there are a lot of clothing companies that sell clothes that also allow you to bring the clothes back to the store so that they can recycle them on your behalf. But I can find specific other resources. I know in my community, they actually pick our recycled textiles up at our tree lawn. So that also may be an option in your area.
One person asked if you could please state the faucet water saver is called.
Sure. So they're usually called water aerators. This one was called, I found this one at a home goods store. I'll link it in the chat.
Great. Okay, the next question is, how do bidets factor into water usage in the bathroom? Knowing that those help to eliminate paper waste, is that an okay trade-off even with the additional water?
So I don't know is my answer. I'm not sure. I think that goes back to the point of where, what does sustainability mean to you? Maybe if you choose to use a bidet, which we know will increase our water consumption in the bathroom a little bit, maybe we also commit to using a plastic bottle or a bottle of water in our toilet tank, plastic bottle or glass bottle filled with water so that it sinks, so that we can offset that.
Okay. Does it take more water to wash a large load of clothes or smaller loads?
So the recommendation that I have read on EPA sites is to try to always wash a full load of laundry. And so based on that recommendation, I believe that they're saying that, someone else found it too, that washing a full load of laundry will be the most water efficient way to wash that laundry.
We have well water and I really want to save water. Are there any specific other tactics I could use?
Sure. So there are other, if you do a search for yourself, I tried to stay away from things that were linked to private companies, but there are private companies that do sell showers. You could buy an EPA WaterSense water shower head, but there are companies that actually offer those types of tools that use even way less water than the EPA WaterSense standard. And so one that I was looking at yesterday when I was doing some more research for this program, it was 0.8 gallons per minute compared to the EPA's of 1.2 gallon per minute. So there are a lot of options. They just are maybe more costly.
All right, the last question that we've got right now, if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to post them now, but I've switched my paper products, towels and toilet paper, to bamboo. Am I actually being helpful in reducing consumption by switching to bamboo?
And I am sorry to say, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know enough about that topic to answer that question, but it's a good question.
Okay, if there's no other questions, that's going to wrap it up for us for today. We will see you in our final session next week, but we just want to say thank you to Courtney for joining us today and putting on a great presentation, and hopefully you learned a little bit about sustainability. Thanks, everyone.